There's a lot of guys out there looking to get into night vision, and when they see the price on even a lower spec PVS-14, they tend to get a little bit of sticker shock, and that leads to them wondering if they can use a SiOnyx Aurora camera as a night vision device. The short answer is no. The SiOnyx Aurora is not a night vision device. It is a low light action camera, something you can use like a GoPro for a couple extra hours at the end of the day. As a night vision device, the SiOnyx Aurora fails in two categories. One is strictly performance, it just doesn't have very good low light capabilities, and the other is in the practicality of the housing itself as compared to a dedicated night vision binocular. First, we'll talk about performance. The main issue is that the SiOnyx Aurora does not have very good low light performance. You've probably seen some pretty impressive videos on YouTube of the SiOnyx Aurora performing well in what is supposedly a low light situation. Pretty much all of those videos are bullshit. A lot of these videos make the Aurora look like it could stand almost toe-to-toe with Generation 3 night vision, and there's also several videos out there claiming that the Aurora outperforms Generation 2 night vision. That is unfortunately not really true at all. When it gets a little bit dark, the image quality of the Aurora becomes pretty bad, and when it gets truly dark, there is no image to speak of at all. I've done a whole bunch of comparisons of the Aurora between Generation 2, Generation 3 night vision. I will be doing another video upcoming soon comparing Generation 1, Generation 2, Generation 3, and digital night vision in a couple of controlled tests. The takeaway is that even Generation 2 night vision can perform down to lower light levels than the SiOnyx Aurora, and that's just taking into account light amplification. That doesn't even factor in the other issues with the Aurora related to the housing, related to the viewfinder lag, and all that stuff we'll talk about in a minute. This is a SiOnyx Aurora Sport. This is the cheapest model that they sell, and a lot of people will make the claim that the Pro model, which is significantly more expensive, also performs a lot better. I think the Sport usually retails for about $500 and the Pro retails for about $1,000. SiOnyx also advertises them with slightly different verbiage. The SiOnyx Aurora Sport says that it can be used in near moonless starlight night vision. The Pro says it has moonless starlight night vision. Both of those are pretty much bullshit claims, though. The SiOnyx Aurora Sport, even with a full moon and a little bit of supplemental illumination, still does not really provide usable night vision. The other thing to keep in mind is that the Pro may have exactly the same internal hardware as the Sport. You might be tempted to think that because the Pro costs twice as much as the Sport, it must have a better quality image. However, the additional cost of the Pro is most likely due to the fact that it has a built-in accelerometer, a built-in GPS, and it's also considered to be weapon rated. Even that claim, I'm not entirely sure if it means anything. It might just be that they're willing to replace the device for you if you run it on a weapon and break it. If you look at image quality comparisons between the original Aurora and the Aurora Pro, mostly what you see is that the Pro has higher contrast, which doesn't really seem to be a function of the sensor. It just seems to be a function of the image processing applied to the image after the fact. When I got my Aurora Sport, I did a little bit of test footage with the default firmware, which is version 1.1. Then I upgraded it to 1.32, which as of this recording is the current firmware version. I did a little bit of test footage to compare to the 1.1 version, and I've been filming with it on 1.32 this whole time. The difference between 1.1 and 1.32 is pretty significant. Mostly what it comes down to is contrast. When you update the Aurora Sport to the 1.32 firmware, you end up with an image that looks pretty much like the Pro. So is it possible that the Aurora Pro performs a little better than the Sport? Yes. Is it going to be enough to make a difference? I highly doubt it. Also, what you should keep in mind at that point is that the Pro costs $1,000. That is a significant step towards getting a real PVS-14. And it still doesn't perform on par with Generation 2 night vision, Generation 3 night vision, and again, the housing has all sorts of other issues, which we will talk about now. Like most cameras, the Aurora has a tripod mounting hole in it, which just so happens to be the way that a PVS-14 J-arm connects. So you can in fact use this as a helmet-mounted night vision device. There's a couple problems that are caused by that. Number one is that the device itself is angled, and you're looking through the electronic viewfinder at the back, so you're getting sort of a diagonal widescreen image of the world. Obviously, if you're using this as a night vision binocular, you don't need to be able to read any of the information on the screen, so that's not an issue, but it does create a very strange viewing window. Another issue is that the Aurora does not have the anti-rotation slot that the tab on the J-arm locks into, so it can rotate on you more easily than a PVS-14 using the same J-arm. Also, because it's a camera, you got to use the electronic viewfinder located at the back, and you have to position it very, very close to your eye if you want to be able to see the entire screen. Also, the field of view on the Aurora is extremely constrained. You have to set your zoom level and you have to pick between two options. One is to zoom it all the way out, in which case the image that your right eye sees isn't going to match up to the image that your left eye sees, which can be disorienting because it's a very unnatural way to see the world. Or you can zoom it in to what feels like a more natural zoom level, however, then your field of view is extremely restricted. It's like looking down a soda straw. Another issue that you can have with this is that the battery life is extremely short. Even if you're not recording, you have to set the electronic viewfinder to not automatically shut off after a couple minutes, and when the device is on all the time, you can probably expect between 2 and 3 hours of battery life. That's decent for a camera of this size, however, it's not very good compared with the 20 to 60 hours of battery life you'd probably get out of a typical night vision binocular. Another issue you might not anticipate is that the Aurora has a whole bunch of indicator lights on it. Also, the big lens at the front creates a huge reflection, gives you this big glowing cyclops eye that everybody else can see from a mile off. Wearing this thing makes your head look like a Christmas tree to anybody else that has night vision on. And even if all of the rest of that doesn't discourage you, the viewfinder lag should be the deal breaker. Walking around with one of these is kind of nauseating because of the delay of the image reaching your eye through the electronic viewfinder. I've seen the claim made that the Pro model has a shorter viewfinder latency. However, that's not officially claimed by SiOnyx, so I don't believe it to be true. Just measured in milliseconds, the delay doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you're actually walking around or trying to shoot with it, it is significant. Oh God, help me. I'm going IR, man. Ooh, this is disorienting. An issue I had with trying to shoot with the Aurora is that I would be moving my aiming device, either a red dot shooting passive or a laser shooting active, be trying to move it over the target, and the delay was such that I would move it past the target before realizing that I was on the target, and then just keep bouncing back and forth from side to side of the target. That's something you could probably get used to, but it's never going to do you any favors. It's always going to be a lot worse than a real night vision device. Can't see anything. You can change the resolution and frame rate settings on the Aurora to try to fine-tune the image that you're seeing. If you drop the resolution all the way down to 360p and you drop the frame rate down to 7.5 FPS, it does perform a lot better in low light, which might be how they justify marketing it as a near-moonless starlight night vision device. However, a 360p resolution at 7.5 frames per second isn't even close to usable if you're trying to move or shoot. It's almost not even usable for static observation. The smoothest image is obviously going to be setting it to 60 frames per second. However, the higher the frame rate, the less light is available for the sensor, so your low light performance degrades significantly. The lowest frame rate you can realistically use without making yourself fall over or throw up is the 24 frames option. When filming with the Aurora on a very bright, clear full moon night, we got some pretty decent footage out of the 720 at 30 frames mode. On a very clear night with a sliver of a moon, the Aurora just couldn't see shit. Even dropped down to 720p at 7.5 frames, it was just not happening.
What?
That's 7.5 frames per second, which gives it pretty much like the most light transmission you can get and still have it actually be video.
This is horrible, man. 7.5 frames a second. You're not giving enough credit. It's usable, dude. See, I'm gonna walk to the truck bed. Oh, it's right there. Oh, I knew that. I have a SiOnyx.
This doesn't mean the SiOnyx Aurora family is totally useless. They're still pretty functional as a low-light action camera. The resolution on one of these is a lot lower than any current GoPro, but the low-light performance is significantly better. I can film some pretty cool stuff with the Aurora in situations where a GoPro or my DSLR would just not see anything. However, you should be extremely suspicious of claims that a SiOnyx Aurora can be used as a night vision device. It just can't be. I know a lot of guys out there seem to be very invested in the idea of digital night vision, to the point where people who have never held or looked through a SiOnyx Aurora will argue with me about the low light performance of the SiOnyx Aurora. That's always a fun conversation to have. Christ, this is fucking horrible. I'm getting a headache. I quit. I quit, I'm done. I'm not saying that digital night vision will never catch up to analog night vision, but no, actually it probably won't. The takeaway is that you should not hold your breath waiting for this revolution of digital night vision. You should also not drop $1,000 on a low light GoPro. You should put that money in the bank towards buying a Generation 3 night vision device. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. See you next time.